Dr. Elena Reyes stumbled as another explosion rocked the New Horizon colony, dust cascading from the lab ceiling. The evacuation alarm's wail had become background noise in the last 20 minutes, a countdown to extinction she refused to accept. Main. Evac corridor compromised. Secondary routes closing in 6 minutes, the colony AI announced with infuriating calm. All personnel proceed to emergency shuttles immediately. Elena ignored the alert. Her focus narrowed to the holographic map on her wrist display. The children's education pod was 3 sectors away, and the Vraxian boarding parties were between her and Maya. Her 6-year-old daughter had been there for her weekly xenobiology lesson when the attack began without warning. Dr. Reyes, her comm crackled. "This is Captain Mercer. We're holding the last shuttle for senior personnel. That's you. 5 minutes." Elena tapped her comm twice, acknowledged but not complying, and drew the colony security sidearm she'd grabbed from an abandoned checkpoint. She wasn't military, but xenobiologists on frontier worlds received basic combat training. She'd never expected to need it. The first Vraxian scout she encountered died before it could raise an alarm, Elena's shot placed with the cold precision of maternal terror. The second managed to scratch her arm with its serrated appendage before dropping. She didn't feel the wound, her system flooded with adrenaline and singular purpose. The education pod doors had been sealed by emergency protocols. Elena overrode them with her science officer credentials, her breath catching at the sight of the room. Tables overturned, learning tablets scattered, but no bodies. The children had been evacuated, thank God. "Maya?" she called out, sweeping the room. Nothing. Then impossibly she heard it. A small sound from inside the specimen container where they kept the harmless samples for children to examine. Elena yanked open the transparent aluminum case. Maya was curled inside, clutching something to her chest, her dark eyes wide with a fear no child should know. "Mommy!" she cried, launching herself into Elena's arms. "Smart girl," Elena whispered, pressing her face into her daughter's hair. So smart to hide. As they ran through the corridors, Elena saw what Maya was clutching, the drawing she'd made that morning. A stick figure family, Elena, Maya, and Grandpa James on Earth, the stars around them rendered in excessive detail by a child who'd inherited her mother's scientific precision. They reached the evacuation zone with 2 minutes to spare. Through the reinforced viewport, Elena could see the last shuttle preparing for departure. They'd make it. Then she saw them. Vraxian elite forces, their chitinous armor gleaming under emergency lighting. At their center stood a commander, distinctive by the red markings on his exoskeleton. They were cutting through the final security door. Elena made her calculations with scientific detachment. The shuttle could depart in 90 seconds. The Vraxians would breach in 60. The escape pod beside them was designed for 1 person. "Maya, look at me," she said, kneeling to her daughter's level. "You're going in this pod. It will take you to the shuttle." "No, come with me." Maya clutched her mother's sleeve. "The pod is too small for both of us." Helena kept her voice steady as she inputted the launch sequence. "Give me your drawing." Confused, Maya handed it over. Elena quickly scribbled something on the back and returned it. "Keep this safe. It's important." She tucked it into Maya's pocket and lifted her into the pod. "Remember what I always tell you about the stars? They're full of people waiting to meet us," Maya recited through tears. "That's right, and they need to meet you." Elena kissed her forehead as the Vraxian cutting tools breached the outer door. "My death is not their victory. It's your inheritance." The pod sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Elena activated the launch sequence and turned to face the intruders. Armed only with her sidearm and a laboratory laser cutter, Commander Keltheros entered the chamber as the pod ejected toward the waiting shuttle. He observed the human female standing between his forces and the escape route, noting her laboratory uniform and the determined set of her features. "Fascinating," he said, mandating his neural implant to record. "You ensured genetic continuation at the expense of your own survival. a predictable yet consistently irrational human behavior. Dr. Elena Reyes didn't respond with words. The laser cutter in her hand found unexpected use on the atmospheric control panel beside her. The resulting explosion wouldn't kill the Vraxians, but it would blind their thermal sensors long enough for the shuttle to escape. The last image captured by the pod's external camera, later broadcast to 17 systems, showed Elena Reyes standing in defiant silence as fire engulfed the chamber, a mother's final act ensuring her universe continued in the form of her child. The recording of Dr. Elena Reyes's final moments arrived on Earth not through military channels, but through the desperate ingenuity of New Horizons survivors. The colony's communications array had been destroyed in the Vraxian attack, but a junior technician had repurposed an astronomical data relay to transmit the security footage. The signal bounced between 3 research outposts before reaching Luna Command. Within hours, the recording spread across the quantum net. No government sensors attempted to contain it. No media outlets needed to amplify it. It moved from person to person, colony to colony, ship to ship, a digital wildfire carrying the image of a lone scientist facing alien invaders to save her child. In the orbital apartment he'd maintained since his wife's death, Admiral James Reyes watched his daughter die for the 3rd time. "Grandpa?" Maya stood in the doorway, small fingers clutching the edge of her sleep tunic. "Are you crying?" James switched off the display and lifted the girl onto his lap. 6 years old, with her mother's eyes and unnerving composure. "Just remembering. Your mom," he said. "Did you sleep all right?" Maya nodded, reaching into her pocket to produce the drawing she hadn't parted with since her arrival on Earth. Mom wrote something on the back. James turned the paper over, revealing not the emotional farewell he'd expected, but a series of alphanumeric coordinates, followed by a single line. "They've been watching us for years. These are their staging points." His hands trembled. Military. Intelligence had been tracking Vraxian movements for months without pattern. Yet here, scribbled in his xenobiologist daughter's handwriting, was information that would reshape Earth's strategic position entirely. "Maya, do you know what these numbers mean?" Mom said they're addresses for bad people. Her small face hardened with determination beyond her years. "She said to give them to you when I was safe." In the Galactic Council's primary chamber, the representatives of 17 spacefaring species convened for an emergency session. The attack on New Horizon had violated at least 3 interstellar treaties, but most delegates expected the typical human response: emotional demands for justice, theatrical threats of retaliation, eventually settling for diplomatic concessions. Thing 2, human delegation arrived uncharacteristically late. They wore standard diplomatic attire, noticeably lacking the mourning band's protocol suggested. Admiral Caney, Earth's senior representative, walked directly to the central podium without waiting for recognition. "Before we begin, there is something you should see," she said, activating the chamber's holographic display. The recording played in complete silence. Elena's desperate race through the colony, Maya's rescue from the specimen container, the final stand against Commander Keltharos. When it ended, Admiral Caney simply returned to her seat. The Council's Secretary General, a myriad collective whose crystalline form reflected the chamber's blue lighting, spoke first. "We acknowledge this tragedy and condemn the unprovoked violence against civilian targets. The Council proposes immediate sanctions against the Vraxian." "The human child survived," interrupted the Vraxian representative, Delegate Servek. "Our commander's observations were merely scientific notation of human behavioral patterns. This regrettable incident occurred during legitimate territorial expansion." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The human delegation remained silent, their stillness more disturbing than any outburst. Hours passed. Proposals were offered and withdrawn. Compensation packages were calculated. Historical precedents were cited. The human representatives took no notes, offered no counterproposals, asked no questions. Finally, the ancient Tildoran elder, whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations long before humans achieved spaceflight, addressed Admiral Caney directly. "Earth has been silent, What is your position on these matters? Admiral Caney rose slowly, her eyes not on the Tildoran but fixed on the Vraxian delegation. A human died protecting her child, she said, her voice devoid of inflection. We have heard your deliberations. Earth will respond. The human delegation stood as one and exited the chamber. On the central table, they left behind a single item, a child's drawing of a family beneath the stars. The Vraxian intelligence officer's report landed on Supreme Commander Dexkar's desk with a concerning lack of urgency. Humans reducing military presence at frontier colonies, withdrawing capital ships to Sol, canceling planned expansions in the Arcturus sector. Dexkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. As expected, their emotional outburst at the council was followed by pragmatic retreat. He gestured to a holographic display showing human fleet movements, a clear contraction toward their home system. This species consistently allows sentiment to override strategic thinking. There is one anomaly, Supreme Commander, the intelligence officer added, bringing up a secondary report. Quantum communications between human worlds have decreased by 73% in the 14 days following New Horizon. Reduced military operations require less communication, Dexkar dismissed. Accelerate the colonization schedule, the Procyon system next. Beneath the Mariana Trench, Earth's deepest ocean point, Admiral James Reyes stood in a facility unknown to 99.9% of humanity. Project Prometheus had been theoretical for decades, a contingency so extreme it had never progressed beyond simulation. Until now, the cavernous chamber hummed with activity as scientists in military uniforms worked at crystalline consoles. One entire wall displayed the coordinates from Elena's drawing, now expanded into three-dimensional models of Vraxian military installations throughout explored space. "You're certain about this?" asked Fleet Admiral Yamato, her eyes on the holographic representation of the Vraxian fleet dispersal. "Once initiated, we cannot recall the protocols." "I've never been more certain of anything," James replied, his hand resting on Maya's shoulder. The child stood beside him, solemnly watching the preparations, refusing to be separated from her grandfather. Elena didn't give her life for a diplomatic concession. In orbit above Mars, the quantum physics installation known as Ananke stirred to life for the first time. Designed as humanity's ultimate mathematical engine, it had been deemed too power-intensive for practical application. Now it began calculating FTL trajectories previously considered mathematically impossible, jump points that would position Earth's fleet directly inside Vraxian defensive perimeters. The Dorsian observation post on Titan, officially a cultural exchange center, recorded these activities with growing concern. The ancient species had seen this pattern before, the terrible efficiency of a civilization entering what they called convergence phase. "They're not retreating," the Dorsian elder transmitted to their homeworld. "They're coiling." On Luna's dark side, Colonel Saito supervised the final modifications to the atmospheric conversion arrays. Originally designed for terraforming hostile environments into habitable ones, the technology had been repurposed with surgical precision. "The arrays will selectively target Vraxian respiratory physiology," the chief scientist explained. "The atmosphere remains breathable for all other cataloged species, while becoming increasingly painful for Vraxian biology." "And they will survive?" Saito asked. "Yes, they will live. They will simply be unable to remain in the affected zones." Saito nodded. "Good. This isn't extermination. It's eviction." In Admiral Reyes's private quarters, Maya sat cross-legged on his desk, watching him review deployment orders. For 6 days she had barely spoken, observing everything with quiet intensity. "Grandpa?" she finally asked. "Are we going to hurt the people who hurt Mom?" James set down his tablet, choosing his words carefully. "We're going to make sure they never hurt anyone like that again. It's not about revenge, Maya. It's about consequence." The girl considered this, then picked up a stylus and began drawing on her tablet. James watched as she meticulously created a star map, placing small figures on different worlds. When she noticed his attention, she explained with unexpected clarity, Mom always said the stars are full of people waiting to meet us. But some need to learn manners first. Across Earth's military installations, personnel received their final briefings before deployment. No speeches were given, no patriotic declarations made. Operation Prometheus proceeded with quiet mathematical precision. Humanity's response calculated not in emotion but in consequence. In the Galactic Council, the Vraxian representative confidently assured the Assembly that the human threat had been contained. Only the ancient Teldoran elder noticed the pattern in Earth silence. When predators hunt, the elder whispered to a colleague, they do not announce their approach with roars. They breathe quietly, they step softly, and then they pounce. The Vraxian mining colony on Arcturus IV detected the approaching vessel 3 months after the New Horizon incident. Governor Thexcal personally monitored the sensor readings, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Configuration? He demanded. Standard human diplomatic courier, his security chief replied. No weapons signatures, single life form aboard. Curious. Thexcal's compound eyes narrowed. Prepare the honor guards. Full ceremonial display of force. The landing pad bristled with Vraxian warriors when the small human vessel touched down. The colony's military capabilities were prominently arranged. Pulse cannons, armored personnel, even a captured human battle mech positioned as a trophy. Standard intimidation protocol for diplomatic receptions. The human who emerged wore neither military uniform nor ceremonial diplomatic attire but a simple gray civilian suit. He carried no visible weapons and displayed no fear as he approached the waiting delegation. The only notable feature was a small, colorful object pinned to his lapel. I am Daniel Chen, he stated without preamble. I request audience with Governor Thexcal. The Vraxian governor stepped forward, his exoskeleton plates shifting to display dominance patterns. I am Thexcal. You come alone? Your species usually sends delegations. This message required only one messenger. Chen's eyes flicked to the paper pinned to his lapel. A child's drawing, crudely depicting human figures beneath stars. Thexcal recognized the image from council reports. The offspring's creation, from New Horizon. He gestured toward his headquarters. Come. You intrigue me, human. Inside the governor's private chamber, Chen accepted the offered seat but declined the ceremonial drink. His calm demeanor unsettled the Vraxian, who was accustomed to human diplomats displaying obvious anxiety. Markers. You've traveled far to deliver a message, Thexcal prompted. Speak it. Chen placed a quantum tablet on the polished stone desk. This contains evacuation protocols for Arcturus IV. You have 48 hours. Thexcal's translator must have malfunctioned. Clarify. In 48 hours, Earth will reclaim this system. Chen's voice remained conversational, as if discussing weather. The tablet contains transportation allocations for your civilian population, recommended evacuation routes, and sanctuary coordinates where no action will be taken against non-military personnel. Laughter burst from Thexcal's primary respiratory vents, a genuine reaction of amusement. With what fleet? Your forces have consolidated defensively. Our intelligence is thorough. Chen's expression didn't change. Your intelligence is what we allowed you to see. I could have you executed. Where you sit, Thexcal reminded him, leaning forward. Your government would never know. That would be unwise, Chen replied, unfolding the drawing from his lapel and turning it over. On its reverse were handwritten coordinates, precise locations of every military installation, weapon cache, and command bunker on Arcturus IV, including the secret quantum communication array buried 3 kilometers beneath the governor's residence. Information not even most Vraxians on the colony possessed. These were documented 4 years ago, Chen explained gently, before New Horizon, before your race ever engaged with humans directly. Thexical's exoskeleton paled, a physiological response he couldn't control. Impossible. You misunderstand, Chen said, retrieving the drawing and returning it to his lapel. This isn't a negotiation or a threat, it's a courtesy. One parent to another. I have no offspring, Thexcal snapped, I do. Chen's eyes softened momentarily. 3 children. They asked me what would happen to the Vraxian children here. I told them we'd ensure they reached safety. He stood to leave, then added, Similar conversations are happening on every Vraxian-controlled world at this exact moment, each delivered by a single, unarmed human representative, each carrying a child's drawing. As Chen departed, Thexcal's second-in-command entered, his posture indicating urgent news. Governor, we're receiving reports. 17 diplomatic couriers have landed on 17 Vraxian worlds simultaneously. The High Command demands immediate, begin civilian evacuation preparations, Thexcal interrupted, staring at the quantum tablet. Quietly. Sir, the humans have no fleet position to— They don't need one. Thexcal's voice became distant. We've miscalculated. Catastrophically. What disturbed the governor most wasn't the humans' confidence or the impossible intelligence they possessed. It was the genuine compassion in Chen's eyes when he spoke of Vraxian children, a concern for enemy offspring that reflected exactly what the Vraxians had dismissed as weakness in Dr. Elena Reyes, a weakness that now looked terrifyingly like strength. Exactly 48 hours after Daniel Chen's departure from Arcturus IV, Governor Thexcal stood in his command center, watching the evacuation transports carrying civilian Vraxians to safety. He'd ignored the High Command's direct order to maintain position, an act of unprecedented disobedience. Yet approximately 60% of non-military personnel remained planetside, their departure slowed by bureaucratic resistance and skepticism. Status of defensive systems? He demanded. His security chief's response died mid-sentence as every monitor in the command center simultaneously went dark. When they reactivated 3 seconds later, the security protocols displayed an unfamiliar authentication code, imperfect Vraxian syntax, maintenance override, calibration protocol 7 alpha. Sir? The communications officer's voice trembled. The orbital defense platform is powering down. It's identifying incoming vessels as authorized maintenance crews. That's impossible, the security chief protested. Those are hard-coded genetic recognition. The sensor operator interrupted with increasing alarm. Multiple spatial distortions, forming inside our defensive perimeter. They're bypassing the outer sensor grid completely. Thexcal watched in disbelief as human vessels materialized at positions that violated every principle of FTL physics. Their emergence points formed a perfect geometric pattern that isolated military installations from civilian centers, appearing simultaneously at 17 strategic locations. No warning shots, no demands for surrender, no communications at all. Targeted. Gravity wells activated around Vraxian military outposts, isolating them from one another. Precision electromagnetic pulses disabled weapon systems without affecting life support or evacuation infrastructure. In the Galactic Council emergency session, representatives from 17 species watched tactical displays in stunned silence. The Vraxian ambassadors' mandibles clicked in agitation as reports flooded in from across their territory. Identical precision strikes occurring simultaneously on every Vraxian-controlled world. This is an act of war, he protested. The Council must intervene. The Dortian observer's ancient eyes narrowed. They've been hiding their capabilities, she whispered to the Tildoran elder beside her. Not developing, hiding. The humans allowed evacuation time, the Tildoran reminded the Council. All civilian routes remain open. No non-combatants have been targeted. On Arcturus IV, Governor Thexcal received the transmission on all frequencies simultaneously. Not the expected human military commander, but a child's voice, speaking in halting but correct Vraxian language. Hello, my name is Maya Reyes. The recording continued, the girl's voice reciting what appeared to be a bedtime story about stars and the people who lived among them, interrupted at precise intervals by another voice, her mother's final words from the New Horizon footage, My death is not your victory, it's her inheritance. Thexcal ordered his remaining forces to launch a desperation counterstrike, only to discover their command codes no longer functioned in their own systems. The invasion had begun before the first human ship arrived, inside their programming, inside their architecture, inside every system they had believed secure. In the council chambers, the Vraxian ambassador received orders from his supreme commander to threaten extreme measures, civilian strikes, suicide attacks, scorched earth. He rose to deliver the message, then froze as his communication device activated without his input, broadcasting his leader's desperate orders to the entire council. The ancient Teal'Doran elder rose from his seat, addressing the silent chamber. They did not attack civilian targets, they offered evacuation. By our own laws, this is a proportional response to unprovoked aggression. The elder's eyes fixed on the Vraxian ambassador. But by their laws, this is restraint. Across 17 worlds, Vraxian military forces found themselves neutralized with surgical precision. No massive bombardment, no glorious last stand. Just the quiet hum of systems they no longer controlled, and a child's voice reciting star names in their own language. It wasn't vengeance. It was judgment, cold, calculated, and delivered with the same methodical care a parent might use when teaching a child about consequences, and it was only the beginning. 3 days after Earth's forces neutralized Vraxian military capabilities, the second phase began. From orbit, the inhabitants of Arcturus IV watched as the human vessels deployed what appeared to be standard terraforming equipment around the planet's atmosphere. They're going to make the planet uninhabitable, predicted a Vraxian scientist in Governor Thexcal's reduced command center. Atmospheric poisoning, a slow extinction. Thexcal had studied human conflict history during the tense 48-hour warning period. No, they would consider that genocide. Their ethical frameworks prohibit. His words faltered as the atmospheric arrays activated, emitting a soft blue glow that spread through the upper atmosphere. Within hours, Vraxian military personnel began reporting respiratory discomfort. By the second day, breathing became painful. By the third, it was unbearable. Yet the colony's non-Vraxian inhabitants, representatives from 12 other spacefaring species, reported no ill effects whatsoever. Targeted atmospheric reconfiguration, the science officer explained, voice strained through his breathing apparatus. The composition remains within standard breathable parameters for all cataloged species except Vraxians, Thexcal. Finished. They've changed our world's air to reject us specifically. Across 17 conquered Vraxian worlds, the same process unfolded with identical precision. The atmospheric conversion arrays, technology Earth had ostensibly developed for making hostile environments habitable, had been calibrated to create conditions precisely incompatible with Vraxian biochemistry while remaining suitable for all other known sentient species. In the conquered military installations, human forces discovered and transmitted evidence of the Vraxians' long-term strategic plans. New Horizon hadn't been an isolated incident or even a simple territorial dispute. It had been the first experimental strike in a carefully planned campaign to test human psychological and military responses to calculated provocations. The Vraxian, Supreme Commander Dexcar, his forces in retreat and his military doctrine in ruins, finally requested direct negotiation with Earth's leadership. The holographic communication was arranged with ceremonial formality. Dexcar, surrounded by his remaining war council, prepared to face whatever human admiral or general had orchestrated his defeat. Instead, the hologram that appeared showed a small room with simple furnishings. A human child sat cross-legged on what appeared to be a bed, surrounded by colorful drawings of stars, planets, and various alien species, including surprisingly accurate renderings of Vraxians. "Hello," said Maya Reyes, now 10 years old. "I'm Maya." Dexcar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Where is Earth's military command?" "They said I could talk to you," Maya replied with unsettling directness. "Because this all started with me and my mom." The Supreme Commander struggled to maintain composure. Earth's disinformation had suggested the child was adolescent, not this small creature who barely reached what would be considered infancy among Vraxians. "Is this some form of psychological warfare?" he demanded. "No. It's a conversation." Maya held up one of her drawings, a detailed rendering of Commander Keltheros from the New Horizon attack. Why did your soldier hurt my mom? Military necessity, Dexcar replied automatically. Your species' emotional attachments create tactical vulnerabilities that's not a real answer, Maya interrupted. My mom told me something before she died. Her small face hardened with an expression no child should know. She said, some people can only learn through consequences. Do you understand yet why she came back for me? The question hung in the air as Dexcar faced the terrible realization that had been building since the first human diplomatic courier arrived. They had fundamentally misunderstood humanity. What they had classified as evolutionary weakness, the irrational protection of offspring at the expense of self-preservation, was the very thing that had triggered this precisely calibrated response. The supreme commander of the Vraxian forces, architect of campaigns that had conquered 11 systems, before encountering humanity, found himself utterly unable to answer a child's simple question. Maya nodded as if his silence confirmed something. That's okay. You're still learning. She began gathering her drawings. The air will keep changing until you leave. We're not killing you. We're just making you go home and think about what you did. The transmission ended, leaving Dexcar facing his stunned war council and the devastating realization that the most powerful weapon humanity had deployed against them wasn't their hidden technology or strategic brilliance. It was their capacity to transform love into consequence. As Vraxian military forces consolidated on their homeworld and colony evacuations continued, an unprecedented civil unrest swept through Vraxian society. For the first time in their recorded history, the warrior caste's absolute authority faced open challenge. The catalyst came when Earth strategically released captured military communications to the Vraxian public, not through diplomatic channels, but directly to civilian quantum networks. The transmissions revealed that the New Horizon attack hadn't been an isolated incident or defensive maneuver, but the beginning of a systematic campaign authorized by the High Command and concealed from their own civilian population. Most damning was Commander Keltharos's personal log from New Horizon, clinically documenting human behavior during the attack. Subject 27 returned to burning quarters for image recordings of genetic ancestors. Subject 41 delayed evacuation to recover communications device containing offspring messages. Subject 112, Dr. Reyes, sacrificed survival for offspring. Statistical analysis confirms preliminary hypothesis. Human emotional attachments create exploitable tactical weaknesses. Recommendation: targeted strikes on family units will produce maximum disruptive effect on human colonial resistance. The recording concluded with his clinical observation of Elena's death. Subject expired protecting genetic offspring. Tactical vulnerability confirmed. In the capital city of Vrax Prime, civilian protesters surrounded the High Command complex, their traditionally hierarchical society fracturing along unexpected lines. The scientific caste openly challenged military leadership. The nurturing caste, traditionally subservient in Vraxian culture, found their voice amplified by public outrage. In an emergency Galactic Council session, representatives watched in stunned silence as Admiral James Reyes presented evidence that humanity had possessed detailed intelligence about Vraxian military capabilities and expansion plans for years before the New Horizon attack. Quantum decryption capabilities far beyond what Earth had previously disclosed had allowed them to monitor Vraxian communications since first contact. Why did you not act sooner? Demanded the Myriad Collective. If you possess this intelligence, why wait until after lives were lost? Admiral Reyes stood with Maya at his side, the child's presence in such proceedings unprecedented in council history. We needed to be certain of their intentions, he replied. We infiltrated their networks. We mapped every military asset they possess. We knew about their expansion plans, but diplomatic solutions remained possible. Until New Horizon. Maya stepped forward, placing a drawing on the central table, this one depicting Vraxian children alongside human children beneath peaceful stars. My mother studied Vraxian culture, she said, her small voice carrying in the silent chamber. She believed your children are like us, that you just forgot how to show it. Admiral Reyes placed his hand on his granddaughter's shoulder. We monitored your preparations. We infiltrated your networks. We mapped every military asset you possess. We didn't strike first because we wanted to be certain of your intentions. His gaze locked with the Vraxian representative's compound eyes. We are not weak because we love our children. We are dangerous because we would burn down the stars themselves to keep them safe. Today we chose mercy. Remember that. On the Vraxian homeworld, as riots threatened to destabilize the government, Supreme Commander Dexkar faced the Civilian Advisory Council for the first time in his career. Their traditional deference had vanished, replaced by urgent demands. For explanation, you classified their familial bonds as weakness, accused the head scientist, mandibles clicking in agitation. You documented it as irrational attachment to genetic offspring, yet their response has been anything but irrational. The miscalculation was understandable, Dexkar insisted. No species we've encountered places such value on individual offspring. It defies evolutionary efficiency. An elder from the nurturing caste stepped forward, a previously unthinkable breach of hierarchy. Perhaps, she suggested, we have been measuring efficiency incorrectly. The Supreme Commander had no response as screens throughout the chamber displayed Maya's drawings of Vraxian and human children together, under peaceful stars, transmitted simultaneously to every communication device in Vraxian territory. The strategic revelation wasn't just that humanity had been monitoring them for years. It was that humans had understood the Vraxians better than they understood themselves. 10 years passed. The Galactic Council chamber, once arranged in hierarchical tiers, with dominant species positioned above lesser ones, had been redesigned as a perfect circle. Earth and the reformed Vraxian Federation now occupied adjacent seats, a symbolic positioning that hadn't escaped notice. Dr. Maya Reyes stood at the central podium, no longer the silent child witnessed in earlier proceedings, but a young xenoanthropologist, presenting her revolutionary cross-species research. At 20, she had already earned a reputation that extended beyond her connection to the historical events that had reshaped galactic politics. The neurological structures governing attachment behaviors in juvenile members of 17 sapient species show remarkable consistency, she explained, displaying comparative brain scans, including, notably, Vraxian young. The chamber fell, silent at this revelation. Her findings demonstrated that Vraxian children formed emotional bonds neurologically identical to human children, despite centuries of cultural conditioning designed to suppress these attachments. What we initially interpreted as fundamental biological differences were predominantly cultural adaptations, Maya continued. The warrior caste system ritualized the suppression of these bonds as a means of producing more efficient fighters, but the neurological capacity remained intact. The implications transformed xenopsychology overnight. Emotional connection wasn't uniquely human, but a common evolutionary foundation across diverse species. What differed was how civilizations either cultivated or suppressed these instincts. After the presentation, Maya encountered Kaveth in the council gardens. Once a junior officer who had witnessed her mother's last stand on New Horizon, he now served as the Vraxian civilian ambassador, one of many profound changes in their society, since the military caste's authority had been challenged. Your research will change how we raise our young, he acknowledged. Already the nurturing caste has gained unprecedented influence in educational protocols. Maya nodded, watching a group of diplomatic children, human, Vraxian, and 4 other species, playing together in the council's intercultural nursery. Mother would have been fascinated. This was the kind of understanding she worked for. Kaveth hesitated, his mandibles shifting in what she now recognized as a pattern of respectful uncertainty. I've been haunted by her final words for a decade. Recently I reviewed the enhanced audio from that day. His compound eyes focused on the distance. Before she placed you in the pod, she didn't say what our translators claimed, how be brave or I love you. She said, remember that they're afraid too. Maya wasn't surprised. Mom studied Vraxian psychology for years. She understood something fundamental about your species that your own leadership had forgotten. That we fear emotional attachment because we don't understand its purpose. Kaveth completed her thought. Your mother's death changed two civilizations. Ours needed to learn that love is not weakness. Together they watched a small Vraxian child cautiously approach a human girl, offering a toy with the careful movements of one learning new social protocols. The human child accepted it with a smile, then returned it with a modification. She'd added a colorful band around its edge. And yours needed to learn, Maya said softly, that when a human dies for their child, it isn't just a parent making a sacrifice. It's a species making a promise, not just of vengeance, but of a better future worth that sacrifice. Above them, a memorial to New Horizon took the form of a simple holographic projection, stars arranged in the pattern from Elena's daughter's drawing. But now it displayed both human and Vraxian constellations overlapping in peaceful coexistence, a reminder of how understanding could emerge from even the darkest conflicts. In the Reyes family archive, preserved alongside tactical records and diplomatic proceedings, Elena's final message remained. My death is not your victory. It's her inheritance. What no one could have predicted was that this inheritance would not be vengeful fire, but illumination, a light that would allow two species to truly see each other for the first time. The judgment had been necessary, the fire had been pure. But the legacy was neither destruction nor dominance, it was understanding.